Hello everybody, this is Freddy from We Scale Your Brand, where we help 6-figure and 7-figure e-commerce brands scale through Facebook ads. And today's video will be all about why your ROAS goes down when you're scaling up and kind of how to combat that so that you can get a higher ROAS at a higher spend level. So before we hop kind of into the actual video, into the graphs, etc., it is important then that you understand the bidding system that Facebook works with, right? So basically, how your bid kind of comes together is you bid if you have your normal lowest cost bidding model. Facebook kind of adjusts that by themselves. Then we have the estimated action rate, which is basically how likely is a person to end up, doing your desired action, which, if you're talking about, D2C e-commerce, it is most likely, a purchase. And then the relevance of the ad, this like average video watch time, how many people comment, how good is the experience of your ad, right? For this, upcoming example, let's assume you have a super good conversion rate, so super high estimated action rate, and then super high relevance, your bounce rate is low, your time on your website is super high, average watch time is high, etc. Like all that kind of stuff is in a super good area, right? So now kind of how the bidding model actually works, we have to understand that before we hop into kind of the reasoning why your ROAS goes down and then kind of how to combat that, you have to understand this first, is basically, this is the time of the day. So, this is like 12 a.m. in the night, and this would be like, 11:59 p.m. So basically the end of the day. And then we have the bid, right? Basically low and high. So at any given day, they are like low bids. So like easy grabs, which Facebook can, get for a super cheap price. This may be retargeting, people who've added to cart like yesterday. Obviously they are kind of super cheap to get, compared to people who've never heard of your brand before, right? This would be, cost per acquisition basically. Again, cost per acquisition also depends on, your estimated action rate and relevance score. But basically, again, for this example, let's assume all of those two things are awesome. So yeah, some people are super easy to grab, some, maybe these ones, have watched a video and Facebook knows that and Facebook retargets them, and, they're also fairly easy to get, those people you've never, that have never heard of your brand before, but, Facebook knows that they are, people that buy often, people that convert easily. So even though they've never heard of your brand before, they are easy grabs, right? So basically, let's assume all of these are like 10, they're like 10 people for $5, 10 people for $10, 10 people for $5 again, 10 people for $7, etc. So with a daily budget of, around $430, which would be like, this times 10, this times 10, this times 10, these times 10, your average CPA would be around the like $7 area, right? Which is super good. Let's assume your target CPA goal is 20. So at $430 per day, your target CPA is, around 7, which is way below your average CPA goal, right? So you're like highly profitable. You want to scale up. Super easy, super, simple concept. And you want to scale up, which is, which makes sense because you're way below your target CPA goal. But now as you're trying to scale up, let's say from 430, let's say just a super high increase to like 2,000 per day, your ROAS goes down. And most people don't know the reason for that, but it's actually super, super simple, right? At, 430 per day, you were grabbing kind of all of these low CPA goals, like people who are easy at converting, right? Facebook knows they're easy to convert because, I don't know, they buy every 2 weeks something from Facebook. Facebook knows that obviously because of the Facebook pixel. Again, they are in your retargeting pool. They may have watched a video. Basically people who are super easy to convert, right? But then there are also some people who are harder to convert, harder to reach. Maybe people who just buy every few months, and Facebook may think, maybe they end up buying today. So Facebook goes after these kind of people. Basically people who are harder to reach, who don't have such a high chance of converting, right? So obviously then if you've kind of spent all of your budget, from the 430 on these kind of low people, or easy to convert people, once kind of these people are gone, Facebook has to go after people who are harder to reach, harder to convert, therefore they have a higher CPA, and therefore your overall CPA goes up, right? So no Facebook, if you're spending 2,000 per day, Facebook has to go after these people, after these, which are way above your CPA goal, right? But because you've already had all of these, which were below your CPA goal, and now you have all of these, kind of your average CPA, evens out around this number, which may be like $25. But now you have the issue, you're spending 2,000 per day, and your CPA is too high, right? You want to you're above your CPA goal, you're not profitable anymore, maybe at 2,000 per day, and no kind of the question, becomes how do you get the CPA number down, right? And that is quite simple if you understand another like basic concept of Facebook advertising, which is, there are only a finite amount of people within your audience that react to your brand or creative or sales pitch in a given day, right? Kind of law of diminishing returns. If you don't know what that is, I've probably linked it below. But basically, yeah, they're not infinite people, right? Finite amount of people per day. And another question is, how do you kind of get the CPA goal down like to that number again, right? At 2,000 per day, or maybe even, at least to the $20 CPA goal that you have, right? And that is, again, kind of simple. So let's assume that this is your graph, right? You're spending, this is your spend level from low to high, and this is your ROAS number, right? As you if you're spending nothing and as you're trying to increase spend, if your ROAS number first goes up, right? Because Facebook can get more of these lower types of people, so your ROAS goes up at first, till, let's assume that this is like the 430 per day mark, and then your ROAS tries to go down because you've reached all of those cheap people, right? Let's assume that this is like one interest group and one video that you were, kind of selling your service or your product with, right? So one video, one creative, one interest group, one creative, and your graph looks like this, right? So how do you get how do you like shift that number so that eventually, you can spend more and your optimal ROAS comes later, right? And then it goes down. Eventually it will always goes down. Like that's the law of diminishing returns, but you kind of can, try to like squeeze out that point, a lot actually. And the way you do this is by basically introducing new creatives or new audiences, which is quite simple, right? Think about your ad as a sales pitch. If you think about your ad as a sales pitch, and again, let's go back to this example. You have one video, then that one video only is good for a certain group of people, right? Maybe your ad includes humor, right? But not everybody in your target audience reacts to humor. Some people might react to like a plain image. Some may react to like UGC content videos. Some may react to like an us versus them kind of content video, right? So basically how you kind of can shift this, diminishing point, kind of to a different spend level is by basically introducing new creatives or new audience, right? That have a different sales pitch. So again, maybe you have one video here, and kind of how you shift this point out is by introducing an image that works great. So within your target audience, it's still one audience, but some people of that audience react to the video and some react to the image. So you might get some cheap like CPAs from your images. Basically here, you can grab all of these with the video, and then there are also people like these who react to your images like this. So you grab those cheap people for the video, you grab those cheap people for the images, and in the end your CPA goal or your CPA goes down again, right? And that's basically all you have to do. Introduce new images, not images, basically new creatives, different sales pitches, that you want to convert the people with, and then also perhaps new audiences, right? The most effective way probably to lower your CPA are the creatives. However, new audiences also can work. For example, lookalike, super, 1% lookalike, super targeted people Facebook knows they want to buy. So you can spend, let's say, like 1,000 against a lookalike until it dies out. And, you can kind of get rid of those, you can kind of shift 1,000 of that to like a lookalike. And this may be like an interest group. So interest group only has to carry 1,000 per day. And your lookalike can also carry 1,000 per day. So you have the 2,000 shifted, 1% lookalike, and your other interest group that you were running previously, and now from the CPA from your interest group that you're running previously should go down again. It's that simple. Just introduce basically new videos or new creatives, new images, new sales pitches, basically, and test new audiences. Right? Those are basically the two things that you should do when you scale up, especially if your ROAS goes down. And maybe you find a third video and know your optimal number, your ROAS number is somewhere around here, and then it starts to go down. That is basically how Facebook ads work, how you kind of can get a higher ROAS at higher amounts of spends, or at least keep an even ROAS, right? I mean the goal. I mean if this is your normal curve, you know, your ROAS starts to go down. Your ROAS starts to go down at like that number, which would be like, I don't know, you know, 500 per day. You know, your ROAS starts to go down at like 500 per day. And then if you can just, you know, by adding one video, you can kind of delay the point until you're spending like 700 per day, you get a very good win, right? So that's always the goal, basically efficiency, you know, not chasing always the highest ROAS numbers, you know, also sometimes efficiency at a high level of spend is very, very desirable, especially if you are at or below your target CPA goal. And yeah, that is how you kind of, you know, that is why your ROAS goes down when you're scaling up, and this is kind of how you can delay the point, at least to some extent, right? It's inevitable that your ROAS goes down if you're spending more, but I mean, this is basically how you delay that point. And this has worked very, very well for me in the past. Again, new creative testing, I have a video on that. New audience testing, I have a video on that as well. And yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.